Yellow aconites drip from the train of spring's dress, glowing brightly in her wake long after she is left. They close and huddle at night, but reawaken in the morn, rushing to dawn's heels like lost children clinging to their found mother. Welcome to Games in the Glade, a stress-free gaming news and reviews podcast. I'm your host, Tina Kelly, and today I'll guide you through some recent news in the gaming world and give my review of a game I think you'll like. Today I'll be discussing the Unapologetically Black and Fast charity event, the Nintendo Direct from February, Curiomatic's Mother 3 fan tribute, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Capcom's latest fighting game offerings, Elden Ring and Horizon Forbidden West, and a slew of indie games that released in February and some upcoming titles for March. I'll be giving my review of several demos from the Steam Next Fest, and finishing up by asking very kindly again for you to tell me what your favorite first bosses are. Right before I left to take care of my aunt in February, the Unapologetically Black and Fast speedruns took place on the Games Done Quick channel on Twitch, and it was incredible. I think my favorite segment was the Resident Evil block, in which a few talented runners played a selection of Resident Evil games in ways you may not have seen before. I loved, first off, Roads of Silence's run of Resident Evil 2, the remake, which showcased not only Roads of Silence's immediately apparent speedrunning talent, but also the ingenuity of the modding community for the Resident Evil franchise. We saw the game's handsome protagonist, Leon S. Kennedy, transformed into Wallace from the claymation classic Wallace and Gromit, with the terrifying and grotesque liquor enemies, which rely on sound to determine where the player is, morphed into everybody's favorite pooch from the Garfield franchise, Odie. These friendly figures in a horrifying landscape keep the games fresh for runners and their communities, and Roads of Silence's interactions with them were perfectly played up. After that block was the event I was waiting for, the Resident Evil 1 HD remaster race by J-Rock the God and Icy Dead Kittens XO, commentated by Level Best, which is at I am the Level Best on Twitter, and Pleasantly Twisted, that's pleasantly and then the word twisted but with no vowels in it. Pretty much anywhere, Twitch, Twitter, all that. For an event like this, when the runners need to focus to beat each other, the commentary has to step it up and be strong to carry the energy during high-focus periods. And of course, Twisted and Level Best kept the energy up, they were informative, and they had great rapport with the racers. Now, the randomizer doesn't just add an element of surprise to a run. It introduces a whole swarm of chaos. In this particular randomizer, item positions are randomized and enemy positions are randomized, so you can't count on a heal being where it should be, let alone the key to open up a door. And if you're thinking you're entering like an easy room with two boring basic zombies in it, you might actually open up that door and find two hunters that are just ready to take your head off. Both runners, of course, get the same seed, so it's a fair race, and the seed is tested well before the race begins in order to ensure that it can actually be beaten and that it's interesting. So let's say you get all the key items one after the other in a seed, for instance. That may not be as interesting as having them spaced out more, which would require the runners to hunt for the next key. I was reading through a thread by Twitter user MCCLore111, a game designer with Mermaid Heavy Industries who creates VR experiences. She was discussing how the map design of The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past is brilliant because any one area has multiple paths to any other area with different interesting stuff along the way. And initially, she also said, there are no initially locked off areas until you get to the Dark World in A Link to the Past. What I gleaned from MCC's thread, which I will link in the description of this episode, was that games that make it easy for you to revisit areas later in the game when you're more familiar with the area and you also possess different abilities to navigate new areas lend themselves well to randomization. I would love in the future to talk to a guest about randomizers and what makes them really great. From my perspective, the Resident Evil HD remaster was a successful randomizer in that there were multiple areas open to the runners to check for key items, plenty of interesting surprises along the way as well. That's part of what made this run so fascinating, was that there was always somewhere for the runners to go from the very beginning. It was a fantastic race and a fantastic event as a whole. I believe the VOD of the event will be available on the YouTube channel at Games Done Quick, so check that out. I will link to the Games Done Quick YouTube channel and Twitch channel in the description of this episode. So, Nintendo showed off some of its new and upcoming offerings in the mid-February Nintendo Direct, and I am absolutely thrilled to see what they have in the works. Let's start off from the top with the first glimpse of a new game that Nintendo showed. Now, this is supposed to be a chill and relaxing podcast, so I'm going to be very calm about this. Fire Emblem Three Houses was announced to get a sequel set in the same universe with the same characters that I have grown to love dearly. It's called Fire Emblem Three Hopes, and it's a Muso or warrior style game. That usually means you have a large cast of characters to choose from, you navigate a map, and you cut down swarms of enemies as you power your way to objectives. Sometimes an ally might need help, or you need to rush to take out an enemy before they secure an outpost for themselves and turn the tides of war. I think Fire Emblem is a great fit for this kind of campaign, and as a huge fan of the cast of Three Houses, I'm really excited to see some of my favorite characters return in Fire Emblem Three Hopes. Next up, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 will be launching this fall. This series of action RPGs by Monolith Soft features real-time action-based battles set in a shared universe. The newest iteration will connect the futures of Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2, according to the game's website, and feature protagonists Noah and Mio as they navigate the tensions between the nations of Kevis and Agnes. If you're a fan of the Xenoblade franchise, please let me know what you like about it. I've never played them myself, but 3 looks really interesting. During the Direct, Nintendo showcased a new ability in Kirby and the Forgotten Land that has been subsequently memed into oblivion: Mouthful Mode. In Mouthful Mode, Kirby can partially swallow things like a car or a giant light bulb and use them in interesting ways, animating the car, for example, or using the light bulb to light his way through the dark areas. This is a little different from Kirby inhaling living creatures to gain power from them, and it looks a little funny too, but I do like this new direction that Nintendo is taking with Kirby. And Wii Sports fans might be interested to know that a sequel is in the works. Nintendo Switch Sports will launch April 29th, complete with tennis, soccer, badminton, volleyball, and bowling. There seems to be lots of possibilities with kinetic play here, with the Joy-Con functioning like the Wiimote of old, but in some new ways too. For soccer, for instance, players insert the Joy-Con into a leg strap, and they make a kicking motion to control their characters as they try to make a goal. It kind of looks like the leg strap they use in Ring Fit, which makes me hope that Ring Fit gets more love and maybe a sequel or some DLC in the future. But for now, Nintendo Switch Sports looks pretty great. If you like soccer, you might be thrilled to know that Mario Strikers Battle League will release June 10th. The last Mario Strikers came out in 2007, so football fans are long overdue for this action-infused 5-on-5 competition. My favorite featured character was, of course, Toad, who looks like a big punchable soccer ball in the footage they showed of Strikers. I never played the original Strikers, but this looks like a great over-the-top take on soccer. Here's a short bit of news. Metroid Dread has gotten a free update with Rookie Mode for folks who are new to the Metroidvania genre, and also a one-hit kill Dread mode for players who are seeking a challenge. And for some retro-themed news, Live Alive, or Alive Alive, or Live Alive, I forgot how they say it in the trailer, the obscure Japan-only RPG is getting a 2.5D remake. This Square Enix classic features a broad cast of characters facing off against a great evil in a myriad ways over a vast span of time, from the prehistoric caveman to a psychic teenager from the future, to a cubic robot in outer space, and then to a ninja skulking through a compound. There are so many cool storylines in Live Alive. It's really great to see it finally get a Western release in the form of a remaster. Speaking of obscure titles, the cult classic JRPG Earthbound has, at long last, released on Nintendo Switch Online service, meaning that anybody paying for online functionality for their Switch can now enjoy one of my favorite games of all time. I believe Mother 1, the first game in the series, is also available on the NES Classic. I have not played the original Mother myself, but now might be the right time to do so. If you've never played Earthbound before, I highly recommend using the free PDF that Nintendo has provided for it, because the original game came with its own walkthrough, because it's really weird and sometimes non-linear. And it's also because that's really cool, and the visuals in the guide are stunning. I'll be linking the guide in the description of this episode, along with the video of the full direct. Since I mentioned Earthbound and the original Mother, let's talk about something that made me absolutely lose my mind this month. Well, February, I mean. The Mother 3 fan tribute by Curiomatic. It's called Welcome to the World of Mother 3, and it's an inspiring recreation of the scenes from the original game, rendered in a claymation-like 3D style and compiled into a trailer. The tribute shows off incredible environments like the forest around Tasmally, the family home of Lucas, the protagonist, and the ancient Otohei Castle. It also recreates some scenes from the game, shows off world exploration, and simulates battles with notable enemies. First, a little bit about Curiomatic. They're a team of artists and designers who formerly worked together on a project called Smashified, where they reimagined fan-favorite characters as Smash Ultimate Fighters, including Geno from Mario RPG and the Hat Kid from A Hat in Time, and even characters who eventually did make it into Smash, like Ridley, King K. Rool, and Banjo and Kazooie. The Curiomatic fan tribute keeps the playful font and artistic style of the game, of course, and all the recognizable elements, preserving the mood of the original game while elevating the style. When they show the scene where the forest of Tasmally is being bombed, for instance, there's still the cartoony explosion noises that plume out of each explosion. Now, this could have been done without them because each explosion, I think, signifies very well. It's very visible and has an appropriate audio cue. But I think the team chose to keep these little touches to nail that playful aesthetic of a Mother game. When it comes to character design, everything is pitch perfect. Lucas looks soft and sweet. Duster's broken gait caused by his poorly healed leg is given weight. Kumatora's spunkiness is reflected in her movements, and Boney the dog's cuteness comes through perfectly in his adorable felted face. Each character looks a lot like a toy, much like the style of the characters and environments in Link's Awakening remake that Nintendo put out a few years back. In this fan tribute, preservation and reimagining are in perfect balance. The scene where Flint, Boney, and Duster confront a mecha moose, for example, has the same shot composition with all the actors in the same places they would be in the original Game Boy Advance game, but the lighting and the saturation in the tribute gives the scene kind of an ominous feel, perfect for the player's first encounter with an incredibly dangerous mechanized boss. I just can't get over the way that the battles are rendered as well. Curiomatic kept the usual Mother format of the enemy being front and center in the encounter, but they reimagined battles to incorporate visuals for enemy attacks. In Mother 3, when an enemy attacks, its sprite typically doesn't change. It might flash briefly, or an effect might be overlaid onto the screen to simulate like a fire attack or something like that, but the enemy is otherwise unmoving. In Curiomatic's fan tribute, however, they show a tree enemy tipping over and falling onto Flint, knocking him off balance. Watching this animation, I couldn't help but think of the fan-made short film Majora's Mask Terrible Fate, which I have talked about on the podcast before. Forgive me, I'm a little obsessed. It's a fan film made by Ember Lab, the people who would go on to make Kena Bridge of Spirits. It's the quality of the animation and the thought put into bringing an old game to life and the care that's really evident about reimagining the source material in a way that would translate well to a new audience that strikes true about Ember Lab's film just as much as it does for Curiomatic's tribute. Now, my initial reaction when I see something like these tributes is unbearable joy that is later tinged with a little sadness, because I know that in the past, Nintendo has not been likely to source out its precious property to someone else for development, no matter how well they've demonstrated that they can handle the IP. However, after seeing what Ember Labs went on to create, Kena Bridge of Spirits, I have hope now that teams like Curiomatic might go on to make their own incredible games and adventures. So that's how I feel now about the Mother 3 tribute and Curiomatic's potential. I really hope they continue to work together to create something amazing. I sincerely hope you view this fan tribute yourself, even if you've never played the Mother 3 game before. It is so beautiful. I think you might even be inspired to give the game a try. And if you do, you'll be happy to know that it's probably the most straightforward Mother game, in my opinion. Anyway, I will link Curiomatic's fan tribute in the link section of this episode. Speaking of Majora's Mask, though, let's talk about some big game news. Majora's Mask is now available through the Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack as of February 25th. According to Nintendo Life, this version of the game fixes an issue with a cutscene that the Wii Virtual Console version of the game introduced, where the cutscene of the giants was playing a little too quickly and ended about 8 seconds early. So, if you're playing Majora's Mask casually, this sounds like a better version of the game to play, but speedrunners might want to stick to the Wii's virtual version to save some time. Thank you to Liam Doolin at Nintendo Life for that information. I will link to that article in the description of this episode. Some more Nintendo news. Nintendo announced on Sunday, February 27th, their next generation of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I wanted to say purple, but I won't. The announcement trailer shows off some landscapes studded with wandering Pokemon, like grasslands, beaches, and festive towns. But folks are mostly excited about the starters who were revealed, including a weed cat, a ketchup lizard, and Donald Duck. For real. Not really Donald Duck, but it looks a lot like Donald Duck. Anyway, a shock to me was that the game will be released in late 2022, so Game Freak must have been working on this alongside of Pokemon Legends Arceus, which released late January. I'll link to the trailer in the description of this episode. On February 21st, as a part of Street Fighter's 35th anniversary, Capcom announced a collection of classic fighting games to come out June 24th, 2022. It includes Darkstalkers Night Warriors, Darkstalkers Revenge, Vampire Savior The Lord of Vampire, Vampire Hunter 2 Darkstalkers Revenge, Vampire Savior 2 The Lord of Vampire, Cyberbots Full Metal Madness, Red Earth, Hyper Street Fighter 2 The Anniversary Edition, Super Gem Fighter Minimix, and Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, which I think I had the demo for when I was a kid, because I remember a little cat girl with blue hair saying, like, EK, or something like that. I can't remember. The collection also includes official music tracks, concept art, official art, training mode for every game except for Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, and mid-game saves. The Capcom Fighting Collection will also feature rollback netcode, which I know is big for fighting game fans, and ranked and casual lobby matches. I'll be sure to include a link to the trailer in the description of this episode. Capcom also teased Street Fighter VI, showing off Ryu's feet and sweaty back, and something else. Kind of, anyway. As he stepped into the spotlight to fight a young American man who I am unfortunately unfamiliar with. Ryu looks great, so this might have been the best game reveal of the year, if it weren't for the game's universally panned logo, which some fans have claimed looks a bit cookie cutter. Capcom will have more news in the summer of 2022, so stay tuned for that. If you would like to watch the trailer for any reason at all, I'll include a link to the video in this episode's description. In other news, Elden Ring released on February 25th and has topped the charts in terms of sales over in the UK. According to Christopher Dring at GameIndustry.biz, the last big launch FromSoft had in terms of blockbuster sales was Dark Souls 3 back in 2016, but Elden Ring beat Dark Souls 3 sales by 26%. This data currently is only considering the physical sales, so Elden Ring might have more records to break as more information comes out. Elden Ring, of course, knocked out Horizon Forbidden West, which released February 18th, from the top spot of sales, but I hope players are still giving this sequel its due. I very much enjoyed Horizon Zero Dawn, and I hope that the continuation develops the universe in a compelling way. Okay, how about a recap of the indie games released in February? There was a ton, so I'm going to give you just a sampling. Let me know if you've played any of these, and if you think that I should give them a try. First up, Not Tonight 2 by Panic Barn and published by No More Robots, which released February 11th. This politically charged game is about an American man who's abducted by authorities in his own country and is wrongfully imprisoned. It's up to his group of friends to travel across the country, working odd jobs at clubs, churches, and cults, to find his documents and deliver them to him in time to rescue him. I think I might have a key for this one, so I might check it out for the podcast. Next is Inua, A Story in Ice and Time, which also came out in early February. Developed by the Pixel Hut, Ico, and Art France, it's a narrative adventure that takes place in 3 separate timelines in the same region in the far north. This is a historical docudrama game, in a way, as it explores the mystery behind the 19th century Franklin expedition in the Arctic, which led to disaster. It's a 3-hour game, according to the Steam page, so this one seems like an interesting weekend gaming diversion. As a plant lover, Strange Horticulture by Bad Viking looks exceptional. It's a puzzle game where you, a horticulturalist, study plants and supply the townspeople with goods that will help them solve their problems, whether that's trouble sleeping, a desire to win somebody over, or even lift a curse that's been placed on them. It released late January, so you might be able to find some playthroughs of this one to get an idea if it's the kind of game that's right for you. Not for Broadcast by Not Games and published by Tiny Build, released January 25th, though you may have seen the prologue a few years back. Not for Broadcast is the dystopian point-and-click adventure with full motion video, which I find a really compelling concept. You manage a news network by performing live edits, censoring swears, cutting to cameras, running ads, filtering propaganda content, and navigating a political intrigue plot while trying to keep your job to support your family. I think I saw my friend Jade, who goes by Skin Teen on Twitch, played the prologue for this back in the day, and I knew immediately that this game would be very special. I would love to play this one myself. Super Dungeon Maker released February 15th in early access. This Mario Maker, but for Zelda if Link was a chicken kind of game, is by Fire Chick and is published by Roca Play. It's got a single-player story campaign to play through in addition to a robust dungeon editor with customizable levels, enemies, secret rooms, traps, and items. I hope this game develops a strong community, kind of like the original Mario Maker, because Zelda dungeons are so fascinating and creative in their own right, so I would love to see them remixed and reimagined by fans. Infernax released on Valentine's Day this year, and this Castlevania-inspired title by Berserk Studios has already built up heaps of praise from fans. It's got a killer soundtrack with tunes by Family Jewels, whom I know through Twitch. I think that when we talk about Metroidvanias, we lean more towards the Metroid and less towards the Vania. So if you're interested in more of that Dracula's Castle kind of flavor, Infernax will absolutely be your thing. And lastly, in terms of February releases, Who's Lila is a very unique looking title by Garage Heathen, which I found out about through the YouTube channel Best Indie Games. I always watch their videos. It was released about a week ago on February 23rd. Who's Lila calls itself a reverse detective adventure where you control your character's facial expressions as you get grilled about the disappearance of a girl named Tanya Kennedy, who was last seen with your character, William. The game processes your character's facial expressions to progress the plot. You can try to put up a mask of indifference, or you can allow your true emotions to shine through. You manipulate your character's facial expressions by tugging at their cheeks, their eyelids, and their mouth to make them smile or frown or grimace. According to the Steam page, there are about 15 endings, and your choices do matter in this one. If you like dark mysteries, this might be the game for you. Now, how about a look ahead? Here are some indie games coming out in March. Far Changing Tides first got put on my radar by a listener, Molly. According to the Steam page, it's a vehicle adventure centered on a boy and a ship, and it's the sequel to Far Lone Sails. So if you've played the first game, you might want to see where Okamoto has gone with their next offering. This one comes out March 1st, the day that this episode releases. Have a Nice Death is a 2D roguelike platformer by Magic Design Studios that's releasing on March 8th. It's got a hand-drawn art style, which of course invites some comparison to Hollow Knight, but Have a Nice Death has procedurally generated levels. As Death itself, you need to pick up the slack in the corporate world of soul reaping. Every run results in a performance review that rewards you with items and upgrades that you might push you further through the departments of Death Incorporated. Have a Nice Death looks fun for roguelike fans. Of course, this March preview would not be complete without Tunic, which is coming out on the 16th, and which I've mentioned multiple times on this podcast. Tunic is a Zelda-like adventure that's been in development by Andrew Scholdice for a good long time, and which will finally see the light of day mid-March. I learned from the Steam page that Tunic has sound designed by Power Up Audio, who worked on Celeste, Darkest Dungeon, and Subnautica Below Zero, as well as working with the charity marathoners of Games Done Quick, so it should have some high-class audio. And last in this segment is a late March title, Koromon by Tragsoft and published by Freedom Games. My brother was the first person to bring this one to my attention. It's a monster-taming Pokemon-like game with a pixel art style. Coromon has turn-based battles in 2D with animated sprites, and it seems to differentiate itself from Pokemon in that it has a stamina-based system. I don't know if that'll limit actions like catching monsters or using items, so I'll have to give this one a closer look soon. And thanks to the Steam Next Fest, I might be able to do that sooner rather than later, as the game has a free playable demo. Speaking of the Steam Next Fest, I thought it would be neat to play a few game demos that were part of the Steam Next Fest as a review segment of this episode. Don't worry, I'll be back to reviewing full games next episode, but because I had limited time in February to play games as I took care of my aunt, I seized the opportunity to sample a lot of different games that I otherwise may not have tried. First up, Soldiers, which was developed by Retroforge and published by Dear Villagers. Soldiers is a pixel art Metroidvania where you can pick from 3 classes: the Scout, the Archer, or the Mage. For the demo, you're only able to play as the Scout, but that's fine because for me, it was the only class I was truly interested in. I adored the art style of Soldiers. It's stunning. It's full color with excellent environments that signify interactive and non-interactive elements really well. Your character's animations are fluid and they have an appropriate weight to them. And in addition to the lovely art style, I appreciated the gameplay of Soldiers. The combat is straightforward and responsive, and it's fantastic at onboarding players with clear tutorials. Soldier shines when it comes to its combat and its platforming, which felt seamless. Where I felt a little drawn back was the actual story, which feels very much like a classic RPG. An evil wizard has tricked your band of soldiers into a deadly trap, and a Valkyrie arrives to deliver you into another realm. And your general, who kind of looks like a human version of that grown-up Arthur the Aardvark, bravely launches into the light stream that the Valkyrie is standing in. You follow him into the beyond and receive your mission to be the coolest dude, or something. The plot didn't really grip me for Soldiers. It felt a tiny bit generic, but I feel that it kind of has to be broad to draw in an audience very quickly for a demo. There were a handful of interesting side characters, of course, but there was one that's a ninja. I don't really enjoy the trope of the mysterious and snarky rogue rival who probably comes to your rescue later on when you're in your darkest hour, about to die to an unbeatable force. That is at least what I expect will happen with the pink-haired ninja named Sinka, who skirts ahead of you in the demo of Soldiers. Honestly though, even with a generic story, Soldiers was a ton of fun to play, and it's a must-play for Metroidvania fans. It feels classic, for better or for worse, and it controls extremely well. The next game I played was Silt by Spiral Circus, and published by Sold Out. Silt has a limbo-like aesthetic combined with an eerie concept. You're lost in the deep sea, and you are not alone. Some creatures can assist you as you try to explore. Others, and most of them, will try to destroy you. Silt's demo was short, which I think would be perfect for an in-person event like E3. It's just the right amount of content to get prospective players interested in its aesthetic, the controls, and its core concept. As a player at home with a little bit of time on our hands, I wanted a tiny bit more of the demo for selfish reasons. I wanted to explore more, I wanted to test more abilities, and I wanted to fight more bosses. But I guess that's the mark of a successful demo. I was left wanting more. What I did get, though, was enough to recommend playing the game to anybody. I enjoyed the puzzle solving, which pitted the player's need to have time to explore and think with the very present danger of sea creatures who, if you're not in control of them, will absolutely eat you. There's a good mix of, I hope I do this in time, and I hope that whatever that thing is, it's not going to eat me. But the puzzles were also very satisfying to complete, such as the fight against one of the Leviathans, in which you have to use everything and every fish around you as your arsenal. The mechanics are showcased as well as the deep-sea creepiness that Silt is based in. There's some strange contraptions, there's deadly creatures. It was creepy without being too scary, so personally I would recommend Silt to folks interested in a spooky environment without the fear of being jump-scared. Now for my favorite demo, Card Shark from Nariel, the creator of Reigns, and published by Devolver Digital. This is the first game I've played where the goal is to cheat at cards. Card Shark is so fun. It is way more fun than it should be. It's so fun that I actually worried my mom by telling her about this game because I was so enthusiastic about cheating people out of their money. I've played far worse concepts, honestly, than this. So you know a concept is well executed when my enthusiasm for it becomes worrisome to the woman who's known me my whole life. In Card Shark, you're introduced to a multitude of cheats, which you then execute in a timed environment. Your task is to assist the Comte de Saint-Germain in cheating rich folks out of their money, first by pouring their wine and then signaling to the Comte what the best suit in that player's hand is by wiping your dish rag on the table. You're just a humble servant at that point at an inn, you can't speak, and you get yelled at by the inn's woman. You're struggling to get by. One game of poker changes your whole life completely, and suddenly you're at inns playing with 2 decks, you're performing sleight of hand tricks, and you're trying to make money to support the caravan of Romani people that has taken you in. Honestly, I adore this game's art style, and the pacing, and the thrill of cheating, don't tell my mom. I don't think this is an easy thing to do in games. In most games that involve cards, it seems hard enough to program a functional card minigame. Adding a cheating mechanism on top of that would be extremely challenging. But making a game solely about cheating is different. It's very clever and it's very fun. Plus, it introduces you to French historical figures. My brother pointed out that the Comte de Saint-Germain is a famed alchemist. I have nothing else to say other than that I really recommend this one. Please play it, even if you don't know anything about card games or sleight of hand tricks. By the way, to save myself some breath, I haven't mentioned this yet, but I have included links to every indie game that I have mentioned in the description of today's episode, just so you won't have to go hunting for it. To wrap up this episode's coverage on the Steam Next Fest, if you have a certain kind of game you like, whether that's strategy, card battles, colony sims, story-rich RPGs, simulators, point-and-click adventures, adventure games, real-time strategy, literally any genre, if you have a free 20 minutes, click through that category on the Steam Next Fest and then find out like the top 2 or 3 games and play it. You'll be glad you did. Last episode I asked you all about your favorite first boss in a video game. I feel like that first boss fight should get your act together, like a parent firmly getting a kid ready for their first day of school. Now, because I was scattered across the East Coast helping my aunt out, I didn't actually get to tweet out the question until I returned home, and unfortunately I've only gotten one response to last episode's question. So I am poking you all one more time. It'll be the last time. What is the best first boss in a video game? What did they teach you as they kicked your butt? Did they come back to fight you again, or was their first effort enough to cement the encounter? If you would like to respond, you have a few options. You could respond to the tweet that I'm about to retweet, or you can tweet directly at Games in the Glade on Twitter using the GITGasks hashtag. Or if you're listening to this on YouTube, you can leave a comment below the video. That is all I have for you today. There will be more news and reviews every other week, so keep an eye out for updates in your favorite podcatcher or on YouTube, and follow the show's Twitter account at Games in the Glade for more. This podcast is supported by Friends of the Forest on Patreon, a link for which I will leave in the description. Thanks to Puddles of Infinity for the use of their song, Porches and Universes, and thank you to Titsay for the beautiful album art. And even though our time together is coming to an end, you can always find your way back here, my world-worn weary friend. There's a spot here in the clearing, in the quietude and shade, for you to relax a while and listen to Games in the Glade.